Hi everybody and welcome to another shootout review video here at Merriam Pianos. Today we're going to be comparing the Roland FP30 and the Kawai ES110. This is one of the most requested videos we have ever done. We're going to be comparing the action, we're going to be comparing tones back and forth, talking about the features. Of course, I'll be sharing my personal impressions of these two amazing instruments. I know them both really, really well. And of course, we sell both of these instruments. So for our YouTube viewers only, please be sure to check out the links in the description and within the video itself for some special offers on both the FP30 as well as the ES110. If it's the first time to the channel, please do subscribe. Thanks very much for watching. Let's get started on these two right away. Okay, so here we've got the Kawai ES110, we've got the Roland FP30. You know, the reason I love doing these videos is because there's so many people out there using these pianos. So it's actually really cool when we get comments on there talking about how people have been able to use the videos to help them make a decision, or even just the other day, somebody wrote me a tip about how I can still have the internal speakers on the FP10, the FP30, and be using the headphone jack out, which is amazing. Apparently, you just hit function and the top F sharp, and all of a sudden, the internal speakers work, even if your headphone jack is in. So these are a ton of fun, like I said, just because so many people are interacting with the content and both are such popular models. We are going to deal with tone first. And another request that we've had in comments is to more methodically go through some of the comparisons of all the different piano sounds and all the different e-piano sounds. So we're definitely going to do this in this video. We're going to go back and forth, go through all the acoustic piano sounds one by one, just so that you can get a really, really good side-by-side comparison. Let's start with some general impressions first. The Kawai over here is really great for a couple of reasons. Its weight is 26 pounds, but how does that relate to the sound? Well, because it's got a slightly smaller amplifier in it than the FP30, and anyone who knows sound electronics is going to know that one of the heaviest components in any stereo is the magnets, is the amplifiers that drive the speakers and the magnets that are inside the speakers. So this guy right here has 14 watts of total power, puts 7 watts for the left channel, 7 for the right, versus the FP30, which actually has 22 watts of total power. So that is, I guess, approximately, what, 50% stronger, 50% more juice. And so that is going to add a couple of pounds on to the FP30 that's not there on the ES110. Do I notice a difference? I notice a difference when you really crank both up, and the mid-range on the FP30 tends to just punch through a little bit more. I wouldn't say that it's a warmer sound. I definitely do not hear any more presence in the bass. In fact, I actually give the Kawai a little bit more points for having some warmth in the bass, even though it's a smaller amplifier. But yes, if you're just talking about sheer projection of tone, especially if you're accompanying someone or playing along with recording or band, max volume, you do notice the extra wattage on the FP30. Digging more into the tone. On the Kawai, we're using their Harmonic Imaging engine, and the Kawai does have several different Concert Grand samples. I believe it's from their EX Concert Grand sample bank that they've had in a few of their instruments for a while. It's a really nice, dynamic sample with tons of high end and some nice, growly bass. On the Roland, you're using the Supernatural sound engine, and we've got 128 note polyphony over here. We've got 192 note polyphony over there. More or less, the difference in piano tone between these two comes down to personal preference. They've both got tons of detail, they've both got some really nice complexity to the tone, and they both have the ability to edit a decent number of parameters within those tones. So let's get to actually listening to those piano sounds right now, and we will start with the Kawai. So this is the default Concert Grand sound on the Kawai, unedited in any way, and coming to you straight out of the stereo 1/4-inch outputs of the back and right into the camera. No affecting whatsoever. So that is the default Concert Grand on the Kawai. Now I've got the same thing set up on the Roland. Let's listen to that. So So two really different characters. To me, this is a great thing because when you've got a marketplace with lots of choice, you're just more likely to find something you're going to love playing. I tell this to everybody who's shopping for a piano, whether it's an acoustic or a digital, is never, ever, ever compromise on the acoustic piano sound, because at the end of the day, even though you can hook these up to computers and, you know, tablets and phones and use them with all sorts of other software, it's really nice to be able to just sit down, turn it on, and without having to fiddle, get a piano tone and a piano action that you love. And so if you're starting with a foundation where its primary objective, which normally is providing you a piano experience, and you love that experience, you're just more likely to use the instrument for a more, for a longer period of time. You're going to, just love everything else you do on it. So pick a piano sound you like. I guess that's the point. Now, I've got both of these wired to my phone, and so I'm using the Piano Partner 2 app on the Roland, and we've got Sound Museum, which is Kawai's app, on the Kawai. And so using both of those, we're just going to start comparing some of these other Concert Grands. So Concert Grand 2 on the ES110. Seems to be brighter and maybe slightly less of a reverb setting on it. This is Studio Grand. Very percussive. Studio Grand 2. Even more percussive than that. This is what they call Mellow Grand. Mellow Grand 2. And then modern piano. Ooh, I like that. Yeah. And rock piano. So that is all the acoustic piano sounds on the ES110. So if my count is right, is that 8? I believe that's 8 acoustic sounds that we've got on the ES110. Now, let's check the same out on the Roland. So this is the default sound once again. And then grand piano 2. Quite a bit more mellow. Grand piano 3. Kind of sounded like the Kawai modern piano. And then ragtime piano. And then they include harpsichord within the piano category here, which is not the case over there. So really, the FP30 actually only has 3 true acoustic piano sounds on it. So I guess that's worth noting because that's quite a bit different than there, where you have 8 totally different discrete piano sounds. We've got 3 over there, and the FP30 is not compatible with the Piano Designer software. So there is possibilities with sort of shortcut key commands to adjust some of these tones, but there's a meaningful difference, 3 versus 8. And then we've got the harpsichord sounds. Let's hop over to, you know what? There are people out there that are actually making use of the harpsichord sounds, so let's actually listen to some of those. I will disclaim everything that I do with harpsichord by saying that I don't really have a great knowledge or experience with Renaissance or classical music that use harpsichord, so this is all just fakery at the highest level, but hopefully people who are listening to the harpsichord sound can pick up enough of this to be able to tell whether it would be their liking. Sounds like that's just an octave doubler in there. And then back over to the Kawai, we can get some harpsichord sounds in there as well. All right, so now let's compare the E-piano sounds. So this is the classic E-piano on the ES110. So there's a bit of a bark there, nice, sort of tiny, and just a very subtle kind of chorus effect that they've got going on there. 60s EP, whirly. Not a bad whirly. And then modern E-piano, like a DX7 kind of sound. And then we're into the organs. And then finally some church organ. And that pretty much sums up the E-piano sounds on the Kawai. So let's hear what the Roland's got to offer. So over here in the E-piano, here is E-piano number 1. E-piano 2. So there's that kind of DX7 sound. And E-piano 3, which is their Whirly. So they both have the Rhodes, Wurlitzer, and sort of a more modern 80s E-piano sound. They've got clav on here, of course, because you have to be able to play Superstition. It's prerequisite. Oh, that's actually, I wish. It's pretty good clav. Then we've got vibraphone, Celeste, and synth bell. It's almost kind of more like a pad. So anyway, so there's a nice comparison of some of the most critical sounds. Now they both also have a complement of other sounds, which would include some strings, includes a few other things like an accordion. And in this department, the FP30 definitely has the ES110 beat in terms of the sheer quantity of tone selection. I think there's 35 tones on there, where we've got something closer to the 20 mark or something like that on the ES110. By and large, though, before we move on to the action, just to sum up really what you're getting in terms of the tone engines and the quality of the sounds, when it comes to the acoustic piano sounds, I like both of I guess, leading #1 default piano tones on these. I find that the Kawai has a more dynamic range. When I go back and I play quietly, I play loudly on the Kawai, I'm finding that there's a bit more of a tonal palette range between soft and loud, as well as the literal volume differences between soft and loud. Roland seems to compress those a little bit, so I'm getting less of a difference. So if for a classical musician, that may play into your choice. If you're a contemporary musician, it may not be as big a factor, but it's, you know, it's worth noting that it's there. Also, we've got 3 choices for the acoustic piano on here, whereas we've got 8 over there. Although in defense of the Roland, that is something that you can, you know, tweak and modify a little bit. So you've got 3 good foundations to work from. On the ES110, we've got a polyphony of 192 to 128. Is that something you need to care about? If you're largely playing this as a solo instrument and not really blending the sounds together, no, not something that I would dwell too long on. If you were using it for a lot of MIDI playback, or you're going to be layering the sounds more often, then it is something to be aware of. The 192 may actually give you a little bit of extra headroom where you need it. And then, of course, we've got the 14 watts versus 22 watts. So that's pretty good summary of the tone and the sound capabilities of these 2 instruments. We're going to splash those specs up on the screen for you so you can just have another double check. And then we're moving on to action. Thanks so much for being with us. The actions on both of these instruments, when we consider the price point, are just outstanding. I can't really say that you'd be going wrong to select either one of these if we're talking about authenticity, if we're talking about robustness of construction, because that's also a thing. If you're going to be using these for hours per day, you don't want it to be falling apart and breaking after a year. So what specifically do we have? Well, on the ES110, we have the first generation of their compact hammer action, and on the FP30 we've got the PHA4 standard action. So the compact hammer action is actually something that wound up in the KDP 110 with a slight upgrade to it. It had the triple sensor, but in the ES110 we're actually just talking about a dual sensor. So that's a slight difference in the accuracy in the MIDI output between the KDP-110, the ES110. So this has got the compact hammer action. Now, along with that, we've got a slight texture on the white key as well as a slight texture on the black key. We've got nice rounded edges, which makes it really easy and smooth for playing anything with a lot of thick chords where your fingers are sort of trying to straddle the keys. So that I appreciate. And in terms of just the, how about we get off of, in terms of the sense of weight, in terms of how easy it is to play, the Kawai feels like it's got a lighter action than the Roland. Not dramatically so. But in terms of being able to play this all night, all day long, without any fatiguing, this definitely is a really great action. Your fingers just kind of glide over it, no problem. Now the action we've got on the Roland is called the PHA4 standard. I think I mentioned that earlier, and this is the action that you're going to find on the FP60. It's also on the FP10, the F140R, RP501. Like, this appears in several different places, and it's a very popular action. Roland's had it for a while, and there's a good amount of debate over whether people actually prefer the PHA4 versus the more advanced, or I should say the more recent PHA50. Which is a slightly different upgraded design that Roland's got on the RD2000 or the DP603 or some of their HP and LX series. The texture on the PHA4 is more dramatic than the texture on the Kawai. You can actually see where they've got the simulated grains where they're trying for kind of an ivory feel, as well as the ebony is also looking well, you know what? The ebony actually has a pretty similar level of texture on it, but for sure the white key is more. Another thing that's important to note is the Roland also has the escapement on the action, whereas the Kawai does not have the escapement. So it sort of sets up an interesting quandary for me in terms of making a clear recommendation between these two instruments, because on the one hand, on the action front, I actually would say that the Roland is going to accommodate a wider range of players who are going to appreciate slightly heavier action and the texture and the triple sensor versus the Kawai, which is lighter, which may appeal again to, there's going to be an audience that likes a lighter action. But certainly if you're talking about a classical player or somebody who's going to be using this as a practice instrument, I'd almost think the FP30 might lend itself better to that because of the action. It's also slightly newer action design. On the other hand, I really appreciate the dynamic nature and the richness of the Kawai piano sound. So it almost, all of these things are highly subjective. So you may sit down at the Kawai and actually love the action and the sound. You may do the same on the Roland. But it is a little bit of a mixed bag between whether there's a clear winner on the piano side or not. They both have pros that are worth considering, and definitely something that you need to just sit down and try yourself. So let's move on now to the final section where we're going to cover accessories, features, and other interesting points that you should know about. But before we do that, let's just throw that slide up there so you can get all the critical specs on the actions between these two instruments. So other than the sounds and the actions, what else are you getting with the ES110 or the FP30? Well, they both come with the basics. You've got really great sustained pedals on both of these instruments, both with half pedaling and nice weight, so you're not, your foot isn't clicking all over the floor and the pedal doesn't skate everywhere. They both come with integrated music stands. We've taken them off for the video, but they sit right here, and they can both actually take quite a bit of weight on them, so you can put one of those big anthology books and it doesn't sort of like dive off the back of the instrument. They're also both available with integrated furniture stands as well as triple pedal options from them, and I think they're both in and around $300 or $400 a piece to add the stand and the triple pedal to it if you need that and if you want that. They also are both Bluetooth enabled, and this is something that you saw me using earlier in the video. Roland and Kawai make free apps which you can use to kind of remote control the instrument. But one thing that we didn't cover, which I am going to cover right now, are the other functionalities that you get through the Piano Partner 2 app on the FP30. And this is something that it's good to know because there's some really cool stuff in here. One of them, which I know a lot of people make use of, is there's a Bluetooth audio recorder. And essentially it's a Bluetooth Midi recorder that allows you to play back, and it's really easy to use, and the quality is extremely high. I'm just going to quickly demonstrate it here for you. And now we should be able to play that back. So that's a cool feature, and actually pretty critical, because on board the FP30 only has one internal sound that you can record. So extending that functionality with the app is great. And then probably the one that is the most fun and really important that you know about if you are going down the FP30 road is the internal rhythms. Big finish! Yeah, that's going to be a ton of fun. I find that these are less useful on gigs, although you can use them in performance settings. They're actually just more fun to engage with on a personal level when you're sitting down and wanting to have fun or get re-inspired by something behind the piano. It's kind of a good thing, or a good way to just enjoy the instrument in a slightly different way. And then of course you've got some what do we call these, like masterpieces that you can actually go through and play along with sheet music, and there's 30 of them that are included with the FP30. So a little more functionality through the Bluetooth apps provided by Roland on the FP30 than on the Kawai, but the Kawai Sound Museum and through certain iOS devices, the Virtual Technician is also available on the ES110. So you've got both of that as well. Have to give props to the ES110 for having the discrete audio outputs. That's a really nice feature because you don't have to have any adapters to split the stereo signal. As we said at the beginning of the video, you can get a discrete stereo signal to a speaker or an amp out of the headphone jack and then use the function top F sharp to reactivate the local speakers. So it is possible to get around that, but it is kind of a nice feature to be able to just do that right out of the box without having to order extra separate cables. So that pretty much wraps up our review and comparison of the FP30 and the ES110. Both really, really capable. FP30 slightly more expensive than the ES110. And for that $100, what are you getting? Well, you're getting a slightly bigger amplifier, you're getting a little bit more functionality on the Bluetooth side, and a few more sounds as well to choose from overall. On the Kawai side, what are the benefits of the ES110? Well, this thing only is 26 pounds, so it's super light to carry around. And if the acoustic piano thing is really where you're going to be focusing a lot of your time, man, oh man, this is a really nice sample set that they've got loaded into the ES110. It's really, really satisfying tone to play. And of course, in terms of the action, you just have to try it yourself and find out whether you're really going to like it. But certainly, if you're looking at the under $1,000 category for digital piano, make sure these two are on your list of comparisons. They're just great. As I said right at the beginning, hard to go wrong with either one. I play them both, love them both. Hope you've enjoyed the video, and if it is the first time to the channel, like we said at the beginning, please subscribe. We'd really appreciate the support. It helps you stay up to date with all the new reviews that we are constantly putting out. And do leave a comment. We do our best to get to each and every one. We really appreciate all the input and all of the thoughts that you add to this whole video effort. So we'll see you back next time. My name's Stu Harrison. Enjoy the shopping. Take care.